the after the hiring, once the person starts working, and there are tensions between the workspace, how the person can be accommodated, how the team works together, and the needs of other employees or supervisors. How do we negotiate those tensions between an accommodation that is necessary or required and the needs of other employees or the workplace? And I will give you maybe 5 minutes for the two of you to address that question, because I want Fatou to answer the last question of this session. Thank you.
Sharon, do you want to go first?
Oh, yeah, I can go fairly quickly. Just to say that there's something about language around like equity, accessibility, accommodation that really scares people into this place of not kind of going through a thought process that is very organic, in the way that we often face scenarios in the workplace where we learn that something is not working for an individual and then go through a process of accommodating them. It can be something as simple as if you're in a meeting with someone and they say, oh, it's cold in here, and then you go through the process of, oh, do you want me to close the window? I think we can control the heat. Do you want a second to go get your coat? That is a process of accommodating someone's needs. And so just releasing yourself of this notion that there is some magical skill set or tool that is required in order to do that, sort of logical pathway of thinking, where you provide, you give space for a person to communicate what they need, build that trust in those pathways, provide a number of alternatives, again, really leaning on that idea of autonomy, provide alternative pathways, allow them to either select on those pathways or iterate on those pathways, and you make the decision of what resources do I need to be able to do that, and then, work through that collaboratively. And so when you break it down into something like it's cold in our meeting room, it feels a lot less tedious and a lot less like you're doing something that is completely outside of the norm. It is a thing we do consistently in the world, and we can just use that same application process. But I also wanted to caution a little bit here on this, something we see often, not just when talking about neurodiversity, but also in general in equity. There is a tendency to spend a lot of resources on building a person's ability to create an environment or work with someone who is, let's say, neurodivergent or Black or physically disabled, rather and not enough resources on ensuring that a person who is neurodivergent or Black or whatever has that space. And so I want to caution you on ensuring that when you look at the ways you're spending resources for the sake of inclusivity, for the sake of accessibility, that you really are putting the majority of your resources and ensuring that that person who you say you're working in service of is getting the bulk of the resources you have put aside to make a place inclusive. And so, for instance, if you're thinking about, I love what Laura mentioned around like what was provided. Yes, there was some training provided and some support provided to managers, but the bulk of that coaching, all of that was put towards focus towards the people you are working in service of. So just be mindful of that. It sounds, matter of fact now, but sometimes if you were to step back and let's say look at over the last 10 years or the last 5 years what your organization has spent, you might find, for instance, the bulk of that budget has been on, let's say, unconscious bias training, which if you really drive it down to it, that is spending on the most privileged rather than those who are most marginalized.